Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 68 of An Untold Narrative. In this episode, we feature somebody wildly unknown who goes by the name Hallway, but he is an amazing human transforming the NFT Web3 music space with his company. But we wanted to highlight, and we always highlight, creatives from all different attributes and creative fields of music, of artwork, of photography, videography, and everything in between. As long as they have a story, we're giving them the platform to share it. So Hallway, you actually doxed or gave away your name, so the people on YouTube are going to see that it says Josh's iPhone. So
yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good. Might as well let it out, I guess.
So
at least they know where at least part of to sign a check over to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, welcome to the show. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you wanting to jump on here and kind of share your story a little bit.
Sure.
I want to start with, what's your 30-second elevator pitch about yourself? Because I just off camera, I was just telling you that I don't do any research on my guests. Usually I meet them through the internet of things. And then when I vibe with somebody, I'm like, you know what, this person's doing something really unique and authentic to themselves in the space. And so I want to give them a platform to share what they're doing. But I don't really know too much about your background or anything like that. So how do you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a professional dot connector. So I am here. I'm here to help however I can. Other than that, like, I've kind of existed in the blog space for a really, really long time and existed kind of like in this weird intersection of like culture and mainly music and fashion. So
okay. And what do you think is your core, like, one skill set? Is it just bridging people together?
I write, so I practice writing quite a bit, so I can do that. But really, yeah, just kind of bringing things together, curating relationships between people. It's like A&Ring, but on a wider scope.
Okay, interesting. And where are you? Because I don't think I've ever asked you the question, like, where in the world are you?
Yeah. So I'm in Salisbury, Maryland right now.
Okay, I have no idea where that is.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's lower Eastern Shore, so close to Delaware, but kind of out in the country, kind of secluded, and yeah, I love it.
And were you originally from there? Like, how did you end up there? Because I've never
So
heard of that.
I'm from a little town called Federalsburg. It's like right at the right angle of Delaware and Maryland on the Eastern Shore. So yeah, I really am fascinated with, bringing culture to my little hometown and seeing sort of the reactions of, like somebody who might just be a farmer their whole life hearing like a drill artist for the first time, and seeing those sort of reactions have always been really fascinating to me.
That's incredible. So you grew up in Maryland, you started there. What did what was like your background like? Was it like low key? Was it small town? What was your education like?
Yeah. Okay. So the LinkedIn,
in like a minute or two, right? Like,
yeah. So, small high school. One of my first experiences of realizing that I was like from the country was they would leave the doors open on the high school so if a deer would run in, it would run back out.
What?
So this was like, I graduated in 2003, and randomly, like, we're between two cornfields, and it was like if a deer got in there, you wanted to make sure that it would run back out. So, yeah, man, where I grew up, it's not like the North or the South, right? It's like right in the middle. It's literally like on the Mason-Dixon line. So like, I kind of describe my upbringing through the music that I grew up with, right? So like my mom my dad's a florist. He's been a florist for, forever. Made it kind of on his own, right out of high school, no college. And so I've been in retail since I can breathe. And, my mom was, she was a pastry chef for a while. So I would wake up to like beignets and so like I've always had like this sort of like creative background where like my parents, they just created stuff with their hands. Right. So, beyond that, I guess the music thing came from every Sunday. My grandfather's a Methodist minister. And they would have Sunday dinners, right? So after church, the whole family and anybody who decided to walk up could stop by and get a plate, and then they would play music afterwards, right? And this happens, I'm late 30s, which is terrible. I don't know my age. But it's happened my whole life, right? So my grandparents have had this for over 40 years. Wow. in different places. And, it didn't really matter what walk of life. You just showed up and there was a plate, right? So it's always been around music, and fellowship has always been in my life since day one. And, super small town. So one of my goals was getting out of high school was to travel. So I worked like 3 or 4 jobs, just to save money up to travel the world before I went to college. So I went to like London and Paris and Spain, just traveled Europe.
After high school?
After high school, yeah.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah. Came back during the summertime and found out I was going to have a kid. So my son was born my freshman year of college at Wesley. So, you just jump right in.
Wow. So you went from graduating high school to taking an excursion in Europe.
Yeah.
Father in a very compact amount of time.
Yeah. So, I had a girlfriend of like 2 years, and, I took my trip after school and came back to, you're going to have a baby in March, right? So second semester of freshman year at college.
Wow.
So this was 2003. My son's going in the Navy in August. So he's 18, and, let's see, 2003.
What was that like, right? Like you probably came off this high of Europe, because I've traveled Europe myself and I love it every time, right? Like
right.
You come back and you're like, oh, I'm feeling good. Like I'm going to go start college. Like I have this new energy amongst me, and you come up with this news. Now some might treat it bad. Some might treat it well. Like you're like, wow, I'm bringing this human onto this planet. Like I got to reshift my life now.
No, that shit was gnarly. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like it was definitely something where like, we weren't together. We're close friends. Me and his mom, we've co-parented for 18 years.
Wow.
And super, just good friends the whole time. And yeah, no, it's just a unique experience, right? Like, it wasn't, I think that what it did was like just expedite the process of being an adult, right? Like it was like, you go to school, and sometimes for some people, I think it's like an extension of high school. And it's just kind of like, well, let me ease into adulthood. This was kind of like, fuck that. Like you're jumping in the deep end, like you're going crazy. So, college was nuts. It was like in between. So I went to a nursing school because it was close, and I went for media arts, which is crazy, right? So but what I learned was like the opportunity was there for me to make a difference in a really, really small area, right? Like the first or second year, this would have been '05. I was really into like online radio at the time, right? I was like, man, this is gonna take over the world. This is gonna be fuck. You know, you're in college, you're fucking, you know, you got a kid, you're like, you know, at this time I'm energetic, I'm ready to go. And then, you know, it's in between that and being like fucking exhausted. It's no like in between, right?
Sure.
So at Wesley, it was, you know, it was an interesting experience, right? It's a private school, and it was like, you know, they were pretty open. They were expensive, which was well, I was an idiot for that shit, but they were pretty open. I had a really dope professor named Mike Nielsen, who really, you know, there was maybe 30 or 40 people in my major at this school. So like they had no reason to give us any money. And he basically, you know, kind of ran it up the ladder to like, you know, we'll make this credited course if you can staff a full-time radio station in this like closet on the third floor of the main building. And we did it. So it was an online radio station called W Extreme at Wesley College. It's a credited course now, so I'm super proud of that still.
And you
But that
started.
was like, yeah. Me and like maybe 6 other people, and we liked sharing music, you know. And that was kind of like my first step into like the blog space per se, right? And sharing music online, and you know, because what I would do is I would be in like Nike Talk and OK Player and all these message boards, and just be stoked to have other people. It'd be like finding your tribe all of a sudden, and you're like, man, this is fucking amazing, you know? Like you just to talk to people who were different, right? And like I had, like I said, my parents were super creative. With, you know, my dad was a fucking flower designer forever. My mom worked with her hands, and it was just like, oh, this is dope. Like I like, you know, I used to go to, when I was a kid, I used to make mixtapes and sell them out of my locker.
Sure.
When high school came, by the time high school came around, I would sell CDs, right? So like I would, you know, burn mixtapes and everything. And I did that from like 6th grade to like 12th grade. I was stoked. Like I was just like, man, I'm making $5 for each one. I had just, that's what I was known for, right? You know, you have like the kids that are known for different things. I was known for the guy that like you can go get your music from, right? Early on. And like I saw online radio as like this really cool like distribution channel to just get it out far. But it wasn't there. So my big thing was like, man, if we can do this, like, I don't know. I was just so excited about being able to get it, to go to a class and have it credited. And it was just me like making a radio station out of a closet.
Totally. I mean, what a wild experience.
Yeah.
And a way to dip your toes into like the music scene, essentially. What did you end up doing after college then? Did you?
So after college, I was like, man, I gotta start applying for like these websites. Like Wilmington, there was All Hip Hop. The guy that started All Hip Hop was out of Wilmington. And there was a ton of journalists like Bonsu Thompson and Jason Rodriguez. And some of these guys, they're all from like Delaware area, right? Tuma Basa lives in Silver Spring. Like there's a bunch of people from around here that got these crazy jobs. And at the time I was like, I had no experience other than that, right? I had no experience writing. And I was like, man, I was working with a bunch of different producers, and, you know, artists kind of flock to people locally that can like give them sort of a platform. And one of them was this guy, Heartbeat. I'll never forget this guy. He's a producer, and he was like, hey, you should go on these message boards and just write like fucking paragraphs of stuff and see if anybody who, you know, make your, it was really smart now that I think about it. It was like, let's make your resume completely shareable, right? And this was like '05. So I was just literally writing music reviews in OK Player message boards and MySpace comments and
Sure.
all of these. That was the one thing that I dipped my toes in, right? I would just go on somebody's MySpace and just, they had the little player. I would just write a review and move on, right? So I play it, write a review, go. And at the time, I met this guy Mike Wax and this other guy Kings, who is now Kings is this guy Garrett Saxon. He's over at Impermanent Digital now, so he's in Web3.
Wow.
But at the time, I met these guys, and Mike was in high school, right? And I didn't know that, but I was like, "Fuck it." He had this idea for a blog, and while it was just like all these guys writing in these message boards, and it was like, "Fuck it, why not?" Right? So at the time, I didn't have a computer. I was using the computer lab at the college. I couldn't afford that shit. WIC was hella expensive. You get in an argument with somebody, and now you can't use the food stamp card. So like, it was very much like, I remember distinctly days of putting HTML and coding into Verizon chocolate phones, my regular phone. So you got to do that. So doing WordPress on Verizon chocolate phone, the little one that slid up. And I still have tapes, like where I interviewed Prodigy before he went to jail the second time. I just started interviewing everybody that I could, right? I was like, the one thing that people don't do is they don't turn down talking about themselves.
Right.
So, hence, here we are. But
here we are, baby.
but I always like just like talking to everybody, right? Like I guess a more frequent, or not frequent, like more present example was my son had never gone to a big concert, right? And my friend Gene Dawson, his manager, was like, "Hey, we're gonna be performing at Something in the Water. We'll get you the artist pass, the whole shebang," right? So my son is like, he didn't know this, but like, he got to meet like Uzi and Tyler and all these people.
Wow.
And for him, it's like this really cool experience. But when we got there, it was like 90 degrees outside, super hot. And I was like, "Hey man, like, go get this security guard a couple bottles of water after you walk through, go find a tent or whatever, the little thing, before you like freak out of all these different like artists just kind of walking around. Go get this guy a water and like introduce yourself," right? And like, it's always been that way, right? Like, I want to know the security guards. I want to know the person that's handing water out. I want to know all of these people, and I want to make sure I know their names, right? Like, and for me, that's always been really important. Just making sure I know everybody's name that's putting equity and, that's putting work in. And, so I used to do that. I used to just talk to engineers. I used to talk to, security guards. I used to talk to weed guys. I used to talk to everybody.
But like, where does that come from, right? Because like that like thought sounds great on paper and in a podcast, right? But like, where, like at its core level, where did you learn to do that?
So, when I was a kid, a lot of times we think about Thanksgiving as, and I hadn't really thought about this till now, but every Thanksgiving, a lot of times, as a family, people would get together, they'd have a meal, whoop-de-whoop. Well, for our Thanksgiving every year, we would go to the church, because my grandfather was a minister, and they would make dinners, and then me and this other guy, Mr. Bernard, I don't remember his last name, but he spoke French, and where we're from, there's a big Haitian population. So what I would do every Thanksgiving and Christmas is ride with Mr. Bernard and carry these meals that we would make and go in these go in the neighborhoods where nobody wanted to go. I'm like I guess 8, super young, and just carry these meals around these people, there might be 30 people in one spot, right? You don't know these people from a ham sandwich, but you're like, fuck it, here's some food, right? So I think that that kind of got me over the fear of I don't know you, so I'm not going to talk to you type of thing. Between that and then at my dad's flower shop, he would have an open house every year, and they would dress me up and put me at the front door, and I would open the door for people and introduce myself and kind of tell people where to go at the open house at the flower shop. So I think it was the combination of those two things where you just don't give a fuck at a certain point.
Dude, that's so incredible. And the when it sparks in my brain, and I probably don't go to the extreme levels of that you do. I think that's an amazing practice. But you're right, Luke, because especially in we'll get to the Web3 era that we both live in.
Yeah.
But in this space, you never know what somebody's really like, or they sit behind this profile picture and you don't know what their net worth is. You don't know what they've actually accomplished in their life. You don't know how old they are. Similar to your comment about MySpace. You don't know who's behind it, right? So the fact that you're willing to be kind enough to introduce yourself, try to get them a water, learn about their life.
Yeah.
That must have presented so many opportunities over the course of your career.
My whole life has been built around that premise.
Wow. That's so incredible. I got chills, man.
What happens, man, is it's not who these people are now, it's who these people are going to be in 10 years, right? So this person in 10 years could be JID, could be, Earth Gang, could be Chance the Rapper, could be whoever, right? So you just kind of treat these people. My thought always was, I want to treat these people with the same level of detail and respect as an upcoming artist with nobody in their corner, that I would with if they're hey, Hallway, you're going to go interview Jay-Z tomorrow afternoon. And that to me has always been important, right? It's not really, it was interesting to see backstage, if you look at all the the environment that's backstage, it's they wall everything off. They say you can't go back here, and so you're curious. But then once you get back there, you're oh, it's just these group of people that I can't get to, walking around and drinking water and talking. It's nothing really special. But I think that the people that are controlling and framing this, they're always overlooked, right? They're always kind of oh, it's so-and-so, or they're union workers, or they're whatever, right? And for me, I know it's exciting for me to get to shout out Big Sam that was at Something in the Water working on the Sun stage, right? It's exciting for me because those people are super dope, right? They might be working that shit 10 years from now, and when I see him, I'll know his name, right? And he might be the person to save my life if there's a shootout, right? He might be the person that says oh, I know Hallway, he's good, he can go. You know what I mean? So him to me is more valuable than Little Uzi Vert or Tyler the Creator, or these people are, because you're going to go back to these areas. You're going to go back to these local spots. And, these people may still be there, or they're not, or you see them in another context and they're doing really well for themselves and they're doing this, and they're going to remember you not for you being oh, I'm so-and-so, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this. No, they're going to know you as just being a nice person. Right. And I think that's more important.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that so much. That's definitely, I hope that's a key takeaway out of this podcast for people, is to just extend a hand and try to help as many humans as possible, because you never know where it's going to go. And it's not like there's an expectation or something that you want in return. It's more of just, you don't know what's going to happen in 5-10 years, and that's the exciting part.
Right.
So to talk about a little bit of, let's skip a couple beats, but like, okay,
Yeah.
you work a couple jobs in the music scene, I assume.
Yeah.
What was your last job before you entered Web3?
Before I entered Web3, I was working in marketing for Coca-Cola.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't anything crazy. It was like after the blog thing and the music thing, I didn't really pursue anything with like DSPs or anything because they always felt weird, and like the label deals were always kind of like sticky and weird. Like there was no transparency to it. There was no kind of like, just didn't feel good, right? Like, so I didn't take the natural progression and go into like a label or go into like a brand as like a brand ambassador for somebody after kind of the blogs kind of dissipated under the DSPs. I, honest to God, I wanted to be closer to my son, and out here there's no music industry, right? So there, it was like, to me, it was like just time. It was just a time thing. It was like, let me go get a regular job with a regular company after the blogs, and let me just be here every day with my kid. Between that, I lived like kind of a weird world, right? Because like I'll have friends who are just, I still like finding music. So like I'll be working in an office for Coca-Cola, and I'll, be finding these young artists or be listening to music the whole time. And instead of me doing anything, it'd be like, oh, you should probably talk to this person, or you should probably talk to that person. So I just kind of like dot connect with people. But it was Coca-Cola. Yeah, it was Coke. And I was doing marketing and sales. So I would be in the office part of the time. And the other part of the time, I'd be out in grocery stores helping merchandisers and salespeople.
Wow. I mean, what a transition. What's one thing that you think you learned from that job that's helped you in your kind of overall music themed career, if anything?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't get in a vacuum, right? Like there's the real world is still moving, right? So no matter what you're doing, like, and with the blog thing, it's such a small blip in the world that's happening around us that you tend to realize like the things that you think are really big or like that are taking over all of the world are taking over about this much, but it looks like this much when you're in it, right?
Sure.
So the perspective of the general population and general public versus the music industry, and kind of scaling that or looking back at it and saying, okay, like, how do things go viral? How do things move? How do things shift? And kind of the human dynamic, right? Of that, the everyday person, the everyday man, woman, everyday, person that's out here working check to check, that's going through life. There's more of them than there are creatives. So understanding that and knowing that, and not becoming super, closed off.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's not the answer. I didn't have an expected answer, but that was not it. That was awesome. I definitely agree with you. What made you leave that job and then start Float? Or was there something in between of that?
Got you. Yeah. No, okay. So one of the things I did like parallel to this, to Coca-Cola, was there was an app called Station Head that was like a radio that where, it's, I won't go into the depths of that. There's people who have Google. My bad. Yeah, you get a text message and it's like crazy. So I worked parallel with that, and I was doing programming for Station Head with a friend of mine named Andre O'Shea. And Dre and me, we did 4 shows. We did programming, and we kind of try to build like sort of a system for them, right? So we're doing this or whatever, and we did it for about a year and some change, and it just kind of it didn't work out. But me and Dre are really close, so I just went back to my regular like 9 to 5, and Dre went off and did creative shit because that's who he is, right? He builds community and does creative shit, which sounds like Web3, and it was, right? So he was doing NFTs, and he hit me and was like, "Hey, you should really be over here." And I was like, "Okay, sure." So I just started showing up. I went in Discord, instantly hated Discord with a passion because it felt so congested and felt like too much. But I was like, all right, I'll be here. I'll check in with people, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, like got into Web3 through Dre. And then through that, then different people kind of said, hey, you should link up with AJ. And I was like, okay, cool. So I linked up with him in October, and
Of
by
21?
December 21, yeah.
And
October.
who is AJ to all of these people, I guess? Like why were they like meet AJ? So for those who aren't familiar, AJ was going to join us, but unfortunately was traveling. He's your business partner.
Yeah.
But like who is AJ to them and who was AJ to you at the time?
Got you. Yeah. So AJ, to everybody that I talked to would always tell me, they'd be like, hey, AJ is the finance guy. Like, he's really smart at money, so you need to go talk to him. And I was like, okay. I was like, I just want to do a podcast or a blog in this space. And at the time, I was just kind of like meandering around trying to figure it out, talking to hella people, because that's what I do. I just talk to everybody. So digitally, I do the same thing. Like, I don't care who you are. I'll just kind of engage in a conversation. And yeah, just kind of like, I can't remember exactly, but just kind of linked up with him. And I guess to them, he was like, he had this Wall Street experience, right? So he had like managed a shitload of money. And so to those people, they're like, this guy's the GOAT. Like, this guy is the man. He's super young. And so I was like, okay, cool. So yeah, I linked up with him in October, and I found out he was in DC. So I'm like, I'm from
far away.
I'm from the ilk where if you're an hour away from me, I'm getting in the car, I'm coming to see you.
100%.
So he turned out he was like 2 hours from me, but still at the time gas prices were feasible. I was like, let me go to DC. And I realized really quickly that this guy was not only super smart, but he kind of knew, he had a plan. And for me, that's always been important, right? You can be smart, you can come from a crazy background, you can come from working at a crazy company, but like doing this shit independently and not having a plan is like, can mean a world of difference.
Yeah.
So
the difference between a good idea and a great idea is the execution behind it, right? So
exactly.
What
yeah, so
you guys met, I mean, pretty much 9 months ago, let's call it. And whose idea was it to start Float, and kind of how did it begin?
Yeah, so Float had already been going on, right?
Oh,
in some capacity. He was the founder, and there were these people around him, V, and some of these, what's the other guy's name? It's terrible. Miles. Just trying to make sure I get people's names right. But there are different people kind of floating in and out, right? No pun intended. And they were, there was sort of this idea of like a playlist protocol or something like that, right? And I came to AJ with my background, and I said, hey, like, can I do a blog here? And he's like, well, I know the people from Mirror, so you should go to Mirror. You should talk to them, da, 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 da. But then he said, listen, if he's like, you can either build something on your own and I'll help, I'll support that, or you can help me build this, right? And I was like, okay, this guy knows finance more than me. He knows money more than me. I'll go over here and help you build this, as opposed to building my own thing. And so January, I quit everything. And I was like, all right, here we go. Like, once I knew the ethos and I knew all of what was going on, I was like, okay, this is up my alley, right? Like helping people out, connecting dots, transparency. Like it was kind of everything that the sort of mixtape culture and Wild West of the blogs and, post Napster in between DSPs was, right? It was like this, you can be as creative as possible and you can give attribution to people and it can be programmatic and it can work in a way that felt really good. So I was like, coming into this, I'm like, all I really want to do is solve a problem, right? So instead of us like saying, we're going to be this protocol or we're going to be this or we're going to be that, like, I was like, let's figure a problem. Like, let me go back through all of my years and dig into my brain and be like, what's one problem that's really fucking bad from this world that can be solved with something in this world? So,
and so what is the ethos of Float surround in terms of problem solving?
So the ethos of Float in problem solving is, that's a good question. People say that's a good question when they don't know the answer off the top of their head and they're stalling. So that's
because I've obviously been getting to know both of you, AJ and Hallway, over the past few months, and what I've realized, is you guys are building this massive community around music and NFTs and Web3, and trying to do things differently from the traditional way of record labels and all these other things, and then also just like dropping new music in the Telegram group and all these other things. And so you're clearly building something. And what is that, I guess, main problem you're going
so the thing that we're building is I want to be the first decentralized major label. That's what I think Float is going to be right now. I mean, that's, I think like I saw a picture of Twitter early on, right? And it looked completely different. So this may evolve into something else, but the ethos is getting musicians paid, right? Getting them compensated, getting them Web2 distribution with Web3 financial and technical mechanics around it. So like, I want to see, so the problem that I saw initially was submissions, right? Like if you go to Complex right now, or you go to one of these big places, you got to know somebody, or you got to send it to an email, which is basically dumping it in the trash bin outside, right? So it's the same thing. So I said, man, like, that's why the first thing we tried to build was this curation engine, was this sort of idea that anybody can drop something in here and somebody who has some sort of stature, some sort of track record can go in here and co-sign it publicly. So if I'm a kid, I'm making music out of my bedroom, there's nothing holding me back from putting it on SoundCloud, from getting it on all these other places. But the big thing is getting it to these publications, getting it to these places that are the catalysts of shifting culture, still happens through submissions that go to an email, right? Still goes to a dark, to a black hole. And so for that, we started to dig into that. We're like, okay, we're a curation protocol. Like we're helping things become more transparent and solving that. And we got into that. We were like, okay, well, if we're doing this to help artists get drops, then what does drops really well? Well, music labels, they do drops really well. They know how to drop music. They know the science behind getting things done for years. And that's, for me, I'm like, okay, well, the difference is they're using TikTok and they're using these social places to gauge what assets to accelerate. And for me, I'm like, well, what if we had the best, a curated group of people co-signing stuff, and there was a mechanism for the next person to slide in here based off of their taste. So like 15-year-old kid, no money, internet connection, and a wallet can start submitting music. And if me, you, AJ, Jacob from Pigeons and Planes, people that are in this industry will co-sign it publicly, enough of those co-signs will let this kid come into this group. Right. So that to me is a way to kind of keep the machine moving, and a way for us to say the community wants this. Once it hits a certain threshold, we'll take it to market. And the next sort of iteration of that is kind of happening now with Zora, right? So we're working with Zora and with our devs. Shout out Uncle Mikey and Outreach and Acid Punk and who else? Theo, amazing group of people, right? And what I want this to be is like nouns for music, right? I want back in the day when the blogs decided that something was dope, they all kind of wrote about it and did all these things, right? I want that to be on chain, right? I want curation to be on chain. And I think there's a lot of different people trying to do something, but the reality is like, it needs to be permissionless. Right. It needs to be programmatic. It needs to happen. So once a certain amount of cosigns happens, if it's a file upload, then it goes right to market, starts the auction, and it goes all the way through. So for me, it's a way to have permissionless curation in a space that desperately needs it.
Wow. And, I'm so happy that you came on at this point too, because like you guys have barely begun, right? So I think
we're still super early. Everybody says we're early, but we're still very early.
Yeah, I know.
I think that's going to be a company that I start somewhere. I'm going to make something still very early. I'm going to write that down.
I mean, it's an exciting time, for our listenership, and a lot of it's, from the footwear background, because that's my background, right? But I always try to branch out into these new spheres and ecosystems, and music obviously is such a huge inspiration to every creative field. And so for those who are just discovering you or Float, I do want to have a couple more questions as we wrap this up. One, where can people find information out about it, right? One, you, and then two, Float.
Yeah. So me, I'm Hallway Finds on Instagram and Twitter. And I'm going to start doing, shout out to Yuri Beats from Zora and FWB and our Telegram. Shout out him, because he has kind of pushed me to just start creating again. Like one of my favorite things was like Matt putting up mashup mixtapes, and just like one of my favorite things in the world was when Mick Boogie was doing that, and Terry Urban and all those guys who were doing mixtapes, and it would just be like, what's a cool concept for something? All right, we're gonna go make it. Fuck it, right? Like Terry Urban has a mixtape called Southern Gold, and it's literally all Santee Gold and all Southern rap. And the shit's amazing. And it's not on DSPs. It's on like random YouTube. It's spread throughout, but it's there, right? And that's the thing. Like, even if the labels or other people want to step in, it doesn't fucking matter at a certain point. Once it's out there in the world, it's out there in the world, and whoever wants to find it can find it. It's always been that way. So let me go back because I get on tangents. So with Float, you can go to float.xyz. August 15th, we're running toward sort of a soft launch where we're building a bridge to Zora. We're doing a curate to earn our token, right? So you can't buy our token. That's the best part about this shit, right? Is the fact that if you know good music and you think you have good taste, you can drop something into float.xyz and the community will then vote you in.
Wow.
Right? And that's how you earn afloat.
Is that from like the artist perspective or anybody who just discovers music?
Anybody, right? Anybody. And theoretically, you can drop any link into our curation engine. We're working, so we just got file uploads. Thank you. So I'm super stoked about that, because then if you're an artist and you want to find a signal to see if people want this as an NFT, you can drop that file in. It can get voted up, and then it can go right into Zora's market.
Wow. And just for people's clarity, float is spelled PHLOTE, correct?
Yeah, PHLOTE.
.xyz. So
.xyz.
Definitely check it out.
We have a secret blog called No Promo that if you can figure out where to find it, so here's the thing, right? Like, I love Easter eggs, right? I love Easter eggs. I love just building stuff and tossing it out somewhere. Like, because truth be told, nobody would know about like Yam's Tumblr or some of these other Tumblrs, because they would never really promote this. Like, here's my shit, da 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 da. They would just make cool shit, and people would eventually find it, and then they say, hey, have you seen so-and-so's this? That's how the cool shit worked, not the other way around. Not like, let me promote my shit. It didn't work like that. You just had people doing cool stuff, and eventually people came to it and was like, oh, yo, you know what's crazy? Like this. Like,
right.
you know, finding shit is really dope. It's really cool. It's always been cool. So, like, we have a secret blog. It's out there. It's called No Promo. If you can find it, we don't promote it. So it's kind of counterproductive. But you know what? Like, I'm excited about it. I get excited about the cool, like the little shit, the stuff that, like, you know, as a kid, you're like, you know, like when you found a mixtape or you found an album and you're like, fuck, this is crazy. You want everybody to know about it, right? Or everybody within your circle to know about it. Maybe not the whole world, right? Because then it spoils it. So, you know, that's what I like. That's what I like. That's why we started the Telegram, because it's like, I just want to get all these good people in one room.
Yeah, 100%. I shared that feeling as well. I mean, that was the beauty of MySpace back in the day too. Of
yes.
Covering music and then sharing it and just being like, check out this artist. You know, I back in middle school and high school, I was an emo kid, so like it was all
shit.
Yeah, it was all that music that I would discover, and that was a fun era for sure.
What was the go-to? I'll give you a go-to album, because Sundays are cleaning the house. Thank the Lord I have a small house. But Sundays are cleaning the house. I'll give you my go-to cleaning the house album if you give me your go-to album from back then.
Oh, man. Oh, boy. Well, my favorite artist back then was Brand New.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard of them.
No, but I'm gonna. That's like the worst Googleable name. But
no, if you Google it, I mean, yeah, it's pretty tough. They are retired now. They don't exist anymore. But they had a ton of. My favorite album was called The Devil and God.
Holy shit, that is the most emo name album you could put out too.
But yeah, check out Brand New. I'm a big fan still. I've seen them like live like 18 times.
Holy shit, good for you.
Yeah, I traveled down to Maryland, Philadelphia, all over the United States to see them. It was pretty crazy. But I got one more question for you. I've been asking all my guests this of late. If you know, I've been thinking a lot about the concept of time, and I've come to peace with the fact that if I died today or tomorrow, I'd be okay with it. I've lived a lifetime a few times. I've accomplished a ton with my life. I'm completely fulfilled in a lot of different attributes. What is the thing that you want to be remembered for once you're gone? Like, what do you want people to say about Hallway, or remember about you when you're no longer here?
Oh man, fuck, that's a deep one. Yeah, so that he did change, right? Like, you know, I think a lot of times you're like, you know, we talk about like, you know, don't change, or like, don't, you know, always be like that, you know, 10 toes down, be that person all the time. But I think that, you know, that I actually did change. That a lot of, you know, I just help people, right? Like, I just like to help people, and I think that's what I want to be remembered for. That, and he put a lot of people on to good music.
I love that. That is a great thing to be remembered by. Hallway, thank you, dude. This has been amazing. I loved your energy throughout this show.
Oh, man.
Episode 68 of An Untold Narrative. This has been a gem for sure. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no worries.